Welcome to SAM Conversations. I am Jiya Shrivastav. Our topic for today is one of the most important issues in India's foreign policy, India's Indo-Pacific assertion and the Act East policy in action. To understand this better, we welcome Group Captain Praveer Purohit, an Indian Air Force veteran who served in various command, instructional, and staff appointments over more than 32 years, and is now a well known voice on geopolitics, defense, and strategic affairs. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. So let's start with my first question. So my first question to you is that as an Indian Armed Forces veteran and now a strategic analyst, how do you view India's threat perception in an uncertain global order?
So the overall matrix of threat today is not just limited to military coercion or military force. Traditionally, one associates threats from either across the borders and mainly in the kinetic domain, that is in the military sphere. Today, the threats have increased multifold, and we talk about multi-domain of warfare. We talk about multi-domain threats. And what are these? Let me list out one by one. The military threat from our two neighbors, that is China and Pakistan, continues. I mean, it remains. There is no denying the fact that they act in collusion with each other. And the primary purpose is to keep India confined into South Asia and not let it increase its influence outside the region of South Asia. The next part is that apart from this, now when we talk about India's interests, whether they are military interests, diplomatic interests, economic interests, our interests are served only if we span out. That is, we look at the global map, our trade comes from the west, goes to the east, and vice versa. So, which means the sea lines of communication are very important. Geography has given us, we are blessed with good geography. And therefore, when India actually, when you look at the map, it actually juts out into the Indian Ocean. And the trade, commerce, your movement of people, etc., resources, they're all into the oceans, most of them. So therefore, a free flow of trade, commerce, unimpeded flow, which is not subject to geopolitical risks and geopolitical coercion, is very important for India. Now, if you have a country that tries to weaponize trade, weaponize economic dependence, and we know, I mean, we are talking about China primarily, which has done this, then that puts at risk our growth. It puts at risk our economic security. It puts at risk our food security for food that we wish to import. It puts to risk raw materials that we require for our growth, for our manufacturing, for our industry. And therefore, that also becomes a major security threat to the nation. Because any threat or any move by any nation which seeks to constrain India's rise, and that's a peaceful rise, which seeks to constrain India's growth, whether in terms of GDP, whether in terms of economy, whether in terms of outreach, is a security threat. The third particular threat is what I see is in the information domain. And we've seen it consistently that how information is being weaponized. We know the abundance of fake news, false propaganda that exists. We saw it during Operation Sindoor also being conducted across. So that itself is a threat because it strikes at the very roots of our republic, of our democratic ideals. It creates a condition wherein people now start doubting their own government, and this is regardless of what government or which party is in power. It is to do with governance basically and institutions. So therefore, these are the three main threats that I see to the nation. And if we analyze deeply, you find that, and when I say information, I let me add, I also include the cyber domain into that, because cyber is a major threat. We've just seen Kudankudalam there was a cyber attack and a data breach there. And this has been happening. We saw it during the Ladakh crisis over the period of 3-4 years, when there were consistent cyber attacks from across attributed to the northern neighbor. So therefore, these are the broad main threats that we have. These are the external ones. So when I look at the entire matrix, a common thread runs in between that, and that is one particular country which is you find that country is has a footprint in all these threads, and that is what is a concerning feature, because we need to, so when we need talk about overcoming these threats, we have to have a multi-dimensional, multi-domain approach.
Yes. Thank you, sir. That's a great perspective. So, moving on, so India keeps signing deals with Japan, Australia, and Indonesia one at a time.
Yes.
China does not see four separate relationships. It sees one encirclement. So, are we being naive about the Beijing, like how Beijing reads this?
Not really. If we deeply analyze the statements coming from Beijing and the discourse in the Chinese media, especially the official media, so this is there is a pattern to it. Now, the problem with Chinese thinking is that it is like my growth is acceptable, but your growth is not acceptable. That is the psyche with which they work, and that is because they have got a deep rooted. It's some kind of like John Garver has called it. He's called it something like how an autistic person behaves. It's something like that. So the problem is that China has gamed the system ever since it joined the WTO, and prior to that, when the Americans opened up to China and China got access to American markets, they got access to European markets at much preferential terms and conditions. They actually gamed the system. They grew out of that system, and it is the very system they grew that they are criticizing. Now the problem is that they have got maritime disputes with so many countries in the South China Sea as well as East China Sea, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Philippines, Brunei, even in Indonesia for that matter, not Natuna Sea. So now, how is it that there's only one country which is acting belligerent? There is only one country which is so there is a problem with this country, and that is because uh, they have actually invited, or they are the casus belli for these countries to get together, establish some kind of a framework wherein no country incidentally here has said, in all these countries that I named with which China has got maritime disputes, they have never said that we need to militarize the Indo-Pacific or the South China Sea, and we need to have a armed military coalition against China. Yes, there are countries which are in coalition with, they have an alliance treaty with the US, but nobody has ever said that it is against China. It is China which fuels this thought that it is to contain China, which I don't think is correct, because every country has a right to grow as long as it is peaceful, as long as it is following certain norms of international diplomacy, international norms. There should be no harm in any country rising. China doesn't see it that way for the simple reason that historically they have got an anti-imperialistic, anti-Western mentality. It has got to do with history, from right from the Opium Wars. They have got a history
Mm,
with Japan. So now history is fine, but then there are countries which have moved on. Europe fought with each other,
mm,
countries within those, but today they are a European Union, and they are united in many ways. Uh, they don't fight with each other like they used to do in the earlier years. So the question is that why can't China behave responsibly
mhm,
and grow along with everybody? But that is
okay.
because obviously they have got this feeling of that they are a great civilizational power, the centrality of China, the Middle Kingdom factor, and that is what is fueling this kind of belligerence from China. And this is what is creating instability in the larger
Mm,
Indo-Pacific region.
yes. Okay, so moving on. So the Quad has been talked about for years with a very little to show military. So what is the one capability India should demand from the Quad in the next 2 years that it has been too polite to ask so far?
Well, as far as the Quad is concerned, now there are differences in the way all the four countries look at Quad. There are certain
Okay.
convergences, but there are certain deep divergences, especially in the way we look at Quad. So while the Quad has or is a good potential, has got good potential to kind of contain China. And contain I use with a little bit of caution, because every country, no country has really said that it is to contain China. But we all know that it is to, I would put it as balancing China. The problem is that Australia, Japan are alliance partners with the US. India doesn't believe in any alliances of those kind. So
Agree.
when it comes to the Pacific, or in the, that is across the, when I say Pacific, I'm talking across the Malacca Strait, east of Malacca Strait. There, that becomes the secondary area of interest for India, whereas the Indian Ocean remains the primary area of interest. But for these three countries, the Pacific remains the primary area of interest, because that is where China is also located. And for China to come into the Indian Ocean, that has got, it's not as easy as they would like to, as easy as it for them to project power in the Pacific, especially the Western Pacific region. So therefore, so what happens is that uh, there are the divergences, as I see them, are primarily because India had initially, if you remember, had said it's a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, whereas
Yes.
now we've come around to that free and open Indo-Pacific. So inclusive was
Hmm.
basically not targeted at China, but it was like an open invitation. Okay, you can also join. I mean, it is not that the oceans are global commons, but also for Russia, because Russia is also to an extent a Pacific power. So it was not to leave out somebody and small groupings, which is what the Chinese media frequently accuses the Quad of. So as far as we are concerned, from Quad, what we can expect is that there would be demands on us that in case of any crisis, in case of any severe major tensions in the Pacific region, in the South China Sea, East China Sea, they would expect certain support from India, whether it be diplomatic or material. From our side, what we really need from Quad is an assurance that the initiatives that have been formed under Quads, for example, the supply chain resilience initiative, the blue dot is not exactly in the Quad, but it is it's kind of an annexure to the Quad. These deliver, because that is what is very critical for our growth, especially in high technology areas. So if the Quad is able to deliver us on those aspects, I'm sure the thinking in India would also slightly change. There would be an increase in trust factor, and the Quad can actually become a very potent organization to ensure stability and a relative balance of power.
Agree. So you were talking about Malacca Strait. So I have a question, regarding that also, that India has never fought a war east of the Bay of Bengal. So if a real crisis broke out in the Malacca Strait tomorrow, could India actually project power there? Or like, are we still an Indian Ocean Navy pretending to be Indo-Pacific one?
Look, if you look at our naval deployments for either port visits and participation in multinational exercises, then we have gone right up to Australia for various exercises. So it's not that we don't have the ability to project power, but in what quantity, or what is the power package that we can project is an issue that needs to be considered, because we have also a Western neighbor which is also belligerent, which can create mischief, which has got a propensity to create mischief very often. So that, I think, would be something that present naval leadership would have given a thought to it. But in terms of, because but what I would like to add here is that now we've got these arrangements, logistic support arrangements with certain foreign navies. Now that gives you a kind of foothold wherein your ships can go, they can get what they call operational turnaround can take place, and then a very fact that an Indian naval ship can reach into the Pacific, goes through the Malacca Strait itself, is a signal of capability to various other nations that are watching it. And so,
Yeah.
therefore, it also ensures it gives them a sense of security that yes, there is a military power that has the capability to reach here. And let's not forget that it's not only just like the Indian Navy or India would like to go and fight there. Look at disaster relief, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief, like in tsunami. I
Mm.
mean, the Quad was born out of the whole concept came out of the tsunami, wherein India, US, Australia coordinated, the navies coordinated. So, benign operations by the military, that is, in this case, the Navy, have also got a tremendous force multiplier effect. They've got a tremendous diplomatic effect, and they are instrumental in increasing our influence across the oceans. Now, when a small country, which is say threatened by a larger country, uh, now sees this, they do look at India with some hope, with some kind of a that there is a country that can provide solace. There's a country which can provide them certain equipment which can help defend themselves against such external threats. And we are seeing it now. We see it in the BrahMos being exported to Philippines, Vietnam. We've signed a deal with Indonesia for the BrahMos, and with Indonesia also for the Astra Mark 1 air-to-air missile. So, I mean, these are things that are wargamed at the services level. But I would only say that yes, by the very fact that we've participated, the Navy, not only the Navy, the Indian Air Force has participated in exercises right up to Australia, Japan. So we have got that capability, and uh, when we look at military capability, we have to look at it holistically because power projection also involves a major thing, major factor, that is air power. And today we have got platforms that are capable of reaching there and projecting power, whether benign or otherwise.
Yes, so that's very insightful. Now, for my last question, how do you view the Modi's government's foreign policy in preserving national security and territorial sovereignty at a time when global equations are so fast changing?
Well, territorial sovereignty is has been always a non-negotiable aspect for every government right since independence. And so, whenever there has been a threat to territorial sovereignty, India has pushed back and we have defended ourselves. Uh, while 62 was a little bit different, but the fact remains that the Chinese did go back. Now, there are various factors for it, and it's really out of the scope right now. But so, regardless of which government is in power, the Indian polity is structured in such a way that any territorial loss, or for that matter, any threat to territorial integrity, will be defended by all possible means. That is number one. Secondly, as far as foreign policy is concerned, foreign policy no doubt has evolved. Our foreign policy, yes, now when we talk about strategic autonomy right from independence, if one really reads, we always uh, that time we did not have the material capability in terms of our economy, because we just had seen the horrors of partition. We were just growing, we had really no resources, so to speak of. So but we still had this concept in mind of strategic autonomy, which means basically that there are certain places, certain aspects that we need to take decisions on our own, which cannot be under pressure of some other country. Strategic autonomy, unfortunately, like what is commonly felt is that we will not never compromise, never negotiate. No, it doesn't mean that. It is your core principles, your core aspects that guide your foreign policy are non-negotiable and uncompromising. But rest there, because it's a give and take. So the evolution, what has happened is that now, because as our economy grew, and we've come to economy which is now fairly well recognized globally, that yes, it is a growing economy, it has got uh, macroeconomic factors are quite stable. So therefore nations obviously then now come to us and are interested in engaging more with India. So that has a, so economy is also leverage in foreign policy. A good economy leverages foreign policy. Incidentally, uh, when India's growth rate was good, consistently about 7.5% in the early decade of this century, that is a time when China was very, very considerably passive. I mean, they were not so belligerent towards us because they knew that India is growing, economic growth is good. So there are these factors which are being leveraged. We are leveraging diaspora in our as part of our foreign policy. This is something which we see in the last decade, which has increased substantially. Thereafter, the outreach to countries like Prime Minister Modi's visit to New Zealand was after Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi was the last Prime Minister. So these outreaches have increased tremendously. They are very, very important because unless India communicates its position, India engages with the world will not understand us. And to make them understand our point of view, we have to ensure that this outreach is done. We have to engage at different levels, and having said that, all these heads of government meetings which take place are all good in the sense that, yes, they are the political directions are given. But the implementation part is the hard part on ground. And that is where I feel that our foreign policy establishment, our bureaucracy, the armed forces, they all have to work in mission mode so that we don't it shouldn't take too long to follow up on the agreements reached and translate them into concrete action. And that is where our real challenge lies. Which also brings me to one point that our foreign service needs expansion with domain experts, not just journalists who know about international relations theories and things like that. Because today foreign policy involves everything. You have trade, information domain, economics, so many things, and that is where we need to give a fillip because that's how we will reach at the high table, along with, of course, economic growth and military capability.
That is very true, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for breaking all of this down for us so clearly. So, with this, we come to an end with this conversation. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. We will see you in the next episode. Till then, goodbye.
Thank you, Jay.